Ever feel like you're always busy, but not really getting anywhere?
Yeah, like spinning your wheels.
Exactly. Like you're putting in all this effort,
Mhm.
but not seeing the results you want.
I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling.
Definitely. And today, we're going to dive into a potential solution, the 80-20 principle.
Ah, the 80-20 principle.
Yeah.
It's this idea that, roughly speaking, 80% of our results actually come from just 20% of our efforts.
So it's all about finding that 20%, right?
Exactly. In Richard Koch's book, Living the 80-20 Way, it's all about applying this principle to every aspect of our lives.
And he doesn't just talk about it theoretically, right?
Yeah.
He uses real-life examples to
And-
show how this plays out, like everything from work and finance
Yeah.
to relationships and even happiness. He even tells the story about Anne Schreiber,
Oh, yeah.
this woman who turned a $5,000 investment into $22 million.
No, that's a result.
So before we get too deep into the examples, maybe let's just clarify. What exactly is the 80-20 principle?
Sure. So, in a nutshell, it's about identifying what we might call leverage points in life. You know, that 20% that really makes a difference.
Okay.
And then focusing our energy there. It's a way to, work smarter and not harder.
Okay, I like that. Work smarter, not harder. But how do we actually make that happen in real life? Let's start with work. The book talks about how much more efficient we've become in certain fields, like computers and agriculture.
Right. Think about it. 50 years ago, computers were these huge machines with very limited power. Now you have a smartphone in your pocket that just blows them out of the water. And agriculture, it used to employ a huge chunk of the workforce. But today, a much smaller number of people can produce more food than ever before.
So we're already kind of doing more with less
We
in a
are.
lot of ways. But how do we apply that to our own individual work lives?
Oh, that's the question, isn't
Yeah.
it? I mean, the book argues that we often equate productivity with just being busy all the time. But what if, and this is a radical thought, what if the key is actually working well?
Okay, now you've got my attention. Working less, tell me more.
There's this great example in the book about a freelancer who actually gets more done
Okay.
by limiting their work to only 1 day a week.
Wait, 1 day a week? How is that even possible?
It sounds counterintuitive, but by giving themselves less time, they're forced to prioritize, eliminate distractions, and really focus on what matters.
So you're telling me I could potentially, achieve the same results
Potentially.
working 1 day a week as I am now, working 5.
Well, it's all about focused effort, strategic planning. The book actually lays out a 3-step roadmap
Okay.
to help us implement the 80-20 principle. So step 1 is what Koch calls setting a destination.
Setting a destination.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What are the 20% of activities that truly align with your goals, your values, your passions?
Okay, so figure out what really matters, what you really want to be spending your time on.
Exactly. And Koch gives this great example of Steve, a restaurant owner from Cape Town,
Right.
who realized his true passions were, his business, hospitality, music, and teaching. Those became his 20%.
So he basically identified the things that were most important to him.
Yes, exactly. And those are the areas he decided to focus his energy on.
But, if you only focus on those passions, couldn't that mean neglecting other important things in life?
That's a really good point. It's about finding a balance, right?
Right.
And that actually leads to the second step, which is charting a route.
So once you know where you want to go, figure out how to get there.
Right. But not just any route, the most efficient route. This involves brainstorming different paths, thinking outside the box.
Don't be afraid to get creative.
Exactly. And then, of course, the most important part, taking action.
You've got to actually do it.
You got it. It's
Yeah.
about making those small, consistent steps toward your goals, always keeping that 80-20 principle in mind.
Maximizing results with minimal effort. Love it.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to this really fascinating concept that Koch calls happiness islands.
Happiness Islands. Okay, I'm intrigued. What are those?
So think back over the past week. What were those moments, those activities, where you felt truly engaged, energized in your element?
Like when you were really in the flow.
Yes, those are your happiness islands.
Yeah.
And the key is to start consciously designing your life to maximize those moments.
So it's not just about waiting for those moments to happen. It's about actively creating them.
Exactly. You have more control than you think.
Okay, I like that.
And he uses the example of Richard Adams, the author of Watership Down. Adams was stuck in this boring government job, but he found real joy in telling stories to his daughters. Those were his happiness islands.
No, that's sweet.
And you know what? Those moments of joy eventually led him to write those stories down, and they became a bestseller. It just goes to show how even these small pockets of joy and creativity can blossom into something incredible if we nurture them.
That's such a powerful example. It really shows how important it is to identify and cultivate those moments where we feel truly alive.
And it ties back to the 80-20 principle, right?
Yeah.
By focusing on the activities, the relationships that bring us the most joy and fulfillment, we can create a life that's meaningful.
So we've talked about work, happiness, those areas. But how does this 80-20 principle apply to something like, say, personal finances?
That's a great question. And it's interesting to note that in the U.S., 20% of Americans hold 80% of the nation's wealth.
Wow.
That's the 80-20 principle in action.
Yeah, that's quite a statistic. So what can we learn from that?
Well, the book goes into a few different financial strategies
Okay.
that align with the 80-20 principle. One of the key concepts is compounding.
Compounding.
Yeah. The idea that even small investments, right, can grow significantly over time if you just let them sit, let the interest do its thing.
You mean like Anne Schreiber, the woman who turned $5,000 into $22 million?
Exactly. She invested in the stock market after World War II and basically just let it grow for 50 years.
50 years. So it's about long-term thinking.
Yes. Not about trying to time the market or find some, magic stock pick. Anne's story just shows the power of patience and long-term thinking when it comes to investing.
That's incredible. But what about those of us who, don't have a large sum to invest right away? What can we do?
Well, the book also stresses the importance of what we might call incremental savings. Even just putting aside a small percentage of your income, but doing it consistently can really make a huge difference over time.
Like Steve and Helen, the couple who wanted to buy that $60,000 apartment.
Right.
Yeah.
They started putting away just 10% of their income each month.
Okay.
And within 6 years, they had enough for their dream apartment.
Okay.
It's a great example of how these small, consistent actions can lead to, significant results.
So it's not always about making these huge sweeping changes. It's more about like those small, high impact actions that you can do consistently.
Exactly. Consistency is key.
Yeah.
Now, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about relationships.
Okay, yeah. Relationships.
This is another area where the 80-20 principle can really make a difference.
Speaking of relationships, the book suggests that 80% of our relationship satisfaction actually comes from just 20% of our relationships. So it's about like focusing on the ones that truly matter.
That's a really key point. And it's not just any relationships. The book specifically highlights romantic partnerships and their link to overall happiness. There's research showing that people in happy romantic relationships tend to just report higher levels of life satisfaction.
It makes sense.
If you're happy in your relationship, you're probably going to be happier overall.
Right. But it's not just about finding any partner. The book really emphasizes the importance of shared values.
Shared values.
If you want a successful long-term relationship.
So be on the same page about what's important.
Exactly.
So it's another example of the 80-20 principle at work, but this time in the context of a relationship.
Yeah, so by focusing on like the key elements that contribute to, a happy and fulfilling relationship,
yes,
you can strengthen the bond and increase your well-being, I guess.
Exactly. It's a win-win. Now, we've talked about work, happiness, finances, and relationships, but there's one more crucial aspect of the 80-20 life. Simplicity.
Simplicity.
The book argues that a good life is often a simple life.
Okay. Less is more.
In a way, yes. And it goes all the way back to, the ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus.
Wow.
Who believed that the essentials for a good life are, pretty basic. Food, shelter, clothes, friends, freedom, and thought.
Wow, it's fascinating how this, connects to ancient philosophy.
Right. And guess what? Epicurus was basically living the 80-20 way without even knowing it. He focused on that essential 20%.
The things that really matter.
Exactly. For a fulfilling life.
So how do we, apply this principle of simplicity to our modern lives? Because things feel pretty complicated these days.
Well, that's the thing. Sometimes the key to progress isn't adding more, but actually subtracting.
Oh, interesting.
Getting rid of the clutter.
So, decluttering our lives.
Exactly. Both physically and mentally, it can create a sense of clarity and freedom, allowing us to focus on what brings us joy and fulfillment.
So we've covered a lot of ground today.
We have.
Work, happiness, finances, relationships, even touched on ancient philosophy.
Right.
It's amazing how this one principle, the 80-20 rule,
Yeah,
can apply to so many areas of our lives.
it really can.
I mean, it's not like a magic formula, but it's definitely like a powerful framework
It is.
for thinking about our lives, more strategically, being intentional.
Intentional, yeah. It's about figuring out what really matters to you.
Yes.
And then making choices that support that.
Your priorities.
Exactly. It's like that, that famous quote,
What is?
work smarter, not harder.
Oh, yeah. Love that one.
The 80-20 principle is kind of like the roadmap for that.
It is. Maximizing results, but minimizing that wasted effort.
Finding those happiness islands, making them a priority.
Absolutely.
Investing wisely, building strong relationships, embracing simplicity.
It's all connected.
And it's all about, at the end of the day, designing a life that is both, productive and joyful.
Mm-hmm.
A life where you're not just like constantly on that hamster wheel.
Feeling your wheels.
Exactly. But, you're moving forward with intention and purpose.
I love that.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
we want to leave you with one final kind of thought-provoking question.
Oh, I like it.
What could you achieve
Mm-hmm.
if you truly embraced this 80-20 way?
That's the question, isn't it? What could you do?
What are your happiness islands? What small steps could you take, like today, to start living a more intentional life?
Yes.
A more fulfilling life?
More joy.
More joy. I think that's a great place to end.
Yeah, I think so too.
Start by just like observing
Mm-hmm.
the patterns in your own life.
Notice where you're spending your time. What
Okay.
brings you satisfaction?
What relationships really nourish you?
Those are the clues.
Once you start to see the world kind of through this 80-20 lens,
Mm-hmm.
you might be surprised at what you discover.
You might.
And who knows, maybe you'll even find some
Somewhat.
hidden happiness islands
Oh, I love that.
along the way.
Happy exploring, everyone.
That's it for this deep dive.
Until next time.